What is up, good people of the world? Oh, goodness me, I think I did this the wrong way. I guess I can just do right here. This might be super loud, though. Like, way too loud. You know something that's really simple, that's super fun to play with on the piano? Hey, Christian. So anytime you're moving from one pitch collection to another pitch collection, if you just hang out around the common tones, no matter how far away the pitch collection is, there are always common tones. And sometimes you can find that place from different locations on the circle of fifths. So for example, if I'm going from like C major to F sharp major, then you could think, oh, those are so far away, the chords don't have anything in common, right? C, E, G, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, you could spell it as G flat, it doesn't matter. But there are a lot of different frameworks in which you could kind of merge these chords together. Like first things first, you could make a scale from just combining those chords, right? So you could take that chord, C major, F sharp. Also, those chords could exist inside of C major, and it's interesting, you can actually combine two pentatonic scales together to get an octatonic scale, just like you combine together two diminished scales. So for example, if we take like, if we look at this diminished scale, right, that's essentially just C pentatonic and also G flat pentatonic, right? So you could have fun with that and go back and forth between these two different collections in that way, both of which are very chill, but then you could also and it's funny because every octatonic scale has little hints of other scales in it. So all of the octatonic scale, you get the kind of, if you do solfege, like May, Re, Do, Ti. You know, for the king, E minor, E melodic minor. But at the same thing, you can do it there, right? And so and it's all just moving up or down in minor thirds, just the octatonic scale, right? So it's super fun to play with those sorts of things. And also, it's also fun to think about ambiguity, which Leonard Bernstein in particular talked a lot about in his Harvard lectures, but in terms of the circle of fifths. So you can think about how many different pitch collections any given pitch collection can fit in the circle of fifths, very simply just by sort of drawing them out and filling in the space. So for example, let's say we take like a C major chord, right? If you look on the circle of fifths and you see a C and an E and a G, if we want to fill in all of those things in fifths, right? A C, an E, and a G, well, we're missing an A and a D. If we put an A and a D in there, then we have this nice 5-note subset in the circle of fifths, which happens to be a pentatonic scale, right? So, major chords, for example, because major chords fit into a 5-note subset, you can rotate those 5 notes. If you want like a 7-note subset, 5 notes have 3 rotations. And a simpler way of putting it, not in the set theoretical sense, a simpler way of putting it would be any major chord could be inside of Lydian, Mixolydian, or Ionian. Any minor chord can be inside of Phrygian, Dorian, and Aeolian, right? So for example, the chord C major could be inside a pitch collection with 1 flat, no flats or sharps at all, and 1 sharp. Those are 3 different locations. So major and minor chords have 3 possible adjacent keys they could exist in. But sus chords are 3 adjacent pitches in the circle of fifths, and so they're very, very flexible. C sus 2, right, can work on A minor. It can also work on like A flat Lydian, right? There's so many different locations because 3 notes have a lot of rotations in 7, right? You know? So you can use those, right, to move move to different locations very, very, very quickly, right? And so it's fun to do that kind of thing with those pivot notes. So I like to often go between like A minor and A flat, sorry, which is kind of the Batman. You know, it's just whatever you want to think of it. I'm using those notes, so it's kind of G, C, and D, right? And you can have fun with it too, because you can be like, you can use A Dorian, which gives you an F sharp, which then can be a dominant 7 on the Lydian A flat. And it's so cool because that note, right, wants to kind of resolve down. Because that's where a half step, G flat goes to F in the context of A flat, Lydian, dominant 7. But in the case of Dorian, we respell that G flat as an F sharp, and it goes up to G. So it has that polarity. So if I'm here, it wants to go up. If I'm here, let's go down. So you can play with that. And you can change scales on a whim. Like, you can do anything that you want. I can use Aeolian. Or I could use Dorian. And those differences in the different minor scales, the 6th and 7th scale degrees, lowered and sharp, right? You all the different varieties of the scales, harmonic, minor, Dorian, and so on and so forth. And so that's why composers often play with that in the lament-based progression. Instead of going, or use them all. And it gives you this dark, bright kind of thing. Like, going like that, which is really fun. So it's sort of like A minor, and then E major, right? G sharp augmented, or mix them together, hexatonic, and then kind of C major 7, and then some kind of you know, F sharp dominant 7. This is kind of a weird chord. It's like F sharp B C E, and then whatever, we go to F major, and then kind of A minor, straight to E. We do 5 of 5, going to 5. You know, and that kind of blues line. If you think about that little skeleton there, you can use that like F dominant 7, E dominant 7, going to A minor, but you can also use the secondary dominant, B dominant 7, right? And then E dominant 7 and A minor, and that's because 5 of 5. Augmented 6 chords are really just tritone substitutions of 5 of 5. But anyway, there's just a couple things that I wanted to share with you guys. So I'm probably going to do a little bit of improvisation. I have a student that I'm teaching pretty soon, so I was just going to do a short little thing. But if you guys have any ideas for improvisations or questions that you wanted to ask in this short time period, I just figured I'd do more of these spontaneous kinds of live streams, since so many of you show up, which is amazing. But, so maybe we'll play around with sus chords a little bit. It's very Studio Ghibli kind of sound. That's something that I've been discovering lately too, that's very haunting, right? So if you have like a chord, then the lower neighbor G is diatonic. But then if you go to E major, the same progression from earlier, like A minor going to A flat, then it becomes minor going to major, you know. I think I got that from Inception, Hans Zimmer's Inception, but it's fun to play that. Because, you know, that's creepy, minor and major mixed together. But anyway. Anyway, but yeah, and it's funny because I used to think that those kinds of lines, fast, that crazy stuff that people play was like people actually thought about that, but you literally don't have to think about it. Like when you first start out, you're like, how can I play that stuff that, and it's impossible, there's no way. But like if you give your fingers a kind of motor muscle memory library of these little things, they have to be small enough bits. That's the thing. If it's a lick, it's too long because then you're just playing a lick, right? And if a lick happens to come out and you didn't mean to do the lick, that's fine. But if you're thinking I'm gonna do a lick, but if it's just a thing, like one common thing in jazz is just to like think of start on a note that's like not a chord tone. So like if we're in A minor, so like B, and then I go down and I do it's like an enclosure. B, sharp A. That type of thing. Also like digital shapes, just essentially playing a certain kind of pattern with your fingers. And you remember John Coltrane does those kinds of things a lot on giant steps. Right? So if you can kind of give yourself that library, then the more that you do it, the less you think about it, and the more your brain can mix these things together, and then it just becomes natural. And there's also something that happens too, and where when you first play in a pitch collection, you have to think about what you do. But if you practice inside of a key, not specific things, not scales, but just being inside of a key, your fingers will automatically magnetize themselves to the key if you think that in your brain, right? So if I think F Dorian, right? I'm not even thinking about what I'm playing, but my fingers will just play F Dorian, and it's only because I spent hours inside of F Dorian. I can't do that. Like I was just playing giant steps earlier, and it was funny. I was practicing giant steps, and the C sharp minor to a G flat dominant 7 going to B, it's basically just a 2-5-1 in B major. I hardly ever play in B major for whatever reason, and I could just do not do so many of the things even though I was hearing them in my head, right? So it just goes to show you, if you want to have that kind of virtuosity on your instrument, you just have to practice. But at the same time, you can make it fun by exploring and having fun inside the key. Just play an F Dorian for an hour, and noodle around. It's not boring because you have freedom to do whatever you want in F Dorian, but since you're constraining yourself to F Dorian, you're making it easier and easier for your brain to carve the pathways, to put it into the motor neurons to, play those things without you having to consciously think about them, so you can devote your prefrontal cortex to other more important endeavors, to put it that way. But anyway, so let me check out some of the questions that you guys have. Let me see if I can open up the message. Live chat. Ooh, I'm going to read some of these. Hello. Aw. I can save the streams. I kind of want to learn the full classical music shenanigans. Do you have a site or something where I can read up on that? I mean, there's a lot of really good resources about classical music. There are a lot of various curriculums that you can find as like free PDFs online, as far as like the very fundamentals of classical harmony. I'm sure there are some good YouTube series. I would need to go research those things, but I'm pretty confident that good things like that exist. But because I kind of got my classical education through kind of like expensive books and things like that, I don't think that's necessary nowadays because all this information is available on the internet. Not that there's anything wrong with getting a kind of textbook, but if you just type in like classical music theory, and usually the top results in Google are going to give you like decent results. But maybe I might do a series on classical music at some point. That would be really fun. But I got to finish some of my other things first. I have so many unfinished things. How would you recommend going about learning jazz piano for a beginner? Well, it depends upon like what you mean by jazz piano. Do you just mean improvisation? Because you can improvise whether or not it's jazz stylistically, and that's fun. But if you really like the jazz style, there are a lot of subgenres inside of that have different performance techniques. For example, Brazilian music, like what's up, Dylan? Brazilian music like bossa nova and stuff like that is like straight. Whatever it is, that type of stuff, that's straight. Whereas swing, beat bop, is obviously, and swing is kind of something that, for me, it was really difficult to get swing. I just had to listen to it a lot and just practice it. And also transcribing solos from like Oscar Peterson, because I love his swing. And playing those solos with him and trying to play as he played them really kind of, imbibed a kind of vestige of swing that probably would not be there if I just kind of, worked on it kind of on my own. But anyway, so if you want to learn swing, then just kind of like, for swing, I found it interesting to practice just very simple exercises. So, for example, D Dorian and F Lydian are both great for this because all the white keys sound great on top of those. All sound great? And also F Lydian, right? There's no flat 9 interval or anything like that. They both sound great, and there are other scales that are like this as well. But so I can take a like F. Just went off. I can take a triad and shape it down. Fun thing out of that, like there's so many fun things you could do with that, and you're just focusing on the rhythm. Right, but yeah, so it's really good to, you obviously want to package it all together, at the end, but in order to focus on just rhythm, it's fun to take a little exercise like that, put yourself inside of a key center where you still have the freedom to improvise a little bit, but you're constrained enough that you don't have to worry about different pitch collections or anything like that, and then you can just really focus on the feel and the kinetic motion of, and also, again, it's a lot of it is just listening to it, right, I can only do chordal improv. What's a good way to get into melodic improv? Well, first thing that I would say is just practice playing melodies without any chords and just see where your ear leads you. And experiment with repetition and violation of repetition. So, for example, let's just say we have the white keys on the piano. I just, jumped down a third, went back up, nothing crazy. And then I could do the same thing and then sequence it down. And then you probably want to do something different. And I just did a triad, but I could do. There's very little wrong things as long as you have a good balance of unity and variety. That's all.